find out who you are, find the right environment for you, and ask yourself who you are not only on the outside, so not only who you are with other people, but who you are internally. The first thing you need to ask yourself if you're preparing to fight is, are you ready?
Like smoking gun was dangerous. That's the way it is, that's the way it was. When you learned to run, it was in the mud, it was in the cold, now it's in your blood.
Can't tell nobody nothing, not a soul.
I've seen, but the devil can't hold me down. I've earned all the hell I'll be, standing on holy ground.
But ultimately, even if in the ring you never feel pain, in the training room you have to. So I just wanted to paint that picture to say this is a part of it. Like, you can be the best person in the world, you could never lose. You could be Khabib professionally. Well, before Khabib ever got to the UFC ring, he went through the trials, the tribulations, and the pain that we're talking about. The second major thing it takes to fight or make the walk to fight is your commitment and proper commitment or proper training. So you have to ask yourself, can you work for free? Do you trust your coach? Do you trust your team? Do you trust your environment? And how long can you actually do this? Like, how long can you sustain your efforts? The work for free part is important, but how that is phrased may mean different things to different people. So we talked earlier about this. If you're a kid, then you know exactly what this is. I mean, everything you do is free. You don't get paid yet. But as you transition to adulthood, doing stuff for free gets a little weird, a little wonky. But this is, in order to be a professional, let's call it, you're going to need at least 5 to 10 amateur fights. That means you're going to have to do at least 2 to 3 years of free work before you ever get there. Can you do that? Do you trust your coach and your team? This is layered, but for me, I've had not too many good coaches and mentors, which I didn't take too harshly because I feel strong-willed, but it does make a difference to have someone who knows the technique, but that's also in your corner and cares about your best interests. So you have to ask yourself that. Like, when you're in the gym, once you've done a year, 2 years, you have to really ask, like, does my coach give me the attention I need? Like, he may be busy, which is that is not wrong to be busy, but if for whatever reason they're so busy they can't give you any attention, then you have to understand and maybe make adjustments or maybe communicate with them or whatever it might be. But can you trust them? Do you know if you can trust them, and try to figure that out? Same thing applies to your teammates. Same thing applies to the overall gym. There's going to be different dynamics and different ways to go about each level, but the building that you're walking in, you want to, let's call it, everyone should be at least even. You don't want to walk into a building where you beef with the front desk, or there's weird things going on, or it's like a bully mentality. Like I said, I would, listing all the things that can be wrong is not really the point of this video, but use your best judgment, trust your gut. If you walk into a place and it don't feel right, it probably is not right for you, at least. And then your teammates. Again, as a kid, it's a little bit more important. As adults, we all should understand and know, like, you don't have to get along with everyone. You should be cordial to everyone. But I'll say, at the very least, it makes all the difference in terms of your everyday enjoyment and overall commitment. Like, if you have a buddy at the gym, like, you don't got to be best friends, but if you got someone you trust and know and that's kind of your speed, that helps with your commitment, and it also helps with your reinforcement. Just knowing, like, I can spar with this guy and he can give me some feedback, and I know I can trust the feedback he's giving me, and I know I can trust, like, if I drop my guard, he's not going to try to just knock me out. He's going to, hit me with this strike and tell me, yo, your guard dropped. Though that's a very, very important part of your commitment, who you commit to, where you're committing to, and the environment you're agreeing to be in. How long can you sustain your effort? So a mark of athleticism is endurance, and endurance is not, that's not your heart. It's your ability to keep on going. Like conditioning and endurance are more interchangeable than like cardio and endurance. I mentioned that it might take 3 years for you to be a professional and like make money off of this. So whether you're talking about your actual body, like can your body go through 3 years of training, and do you know how to recover and prepare properly over and over again? But also your mental, like can you mentally endure everything it takes to fall, get back up, fall, get back up, fall, get back up. And then your plan, like do you have enough time to endure the process? So one thing I can think about, and again there's 1,000 examples, but like you could, if you're 20 and your timeline is to 25, you may have a kid, or you may need to get like a full-time job in that time period. So that's what I mean by sustain. Like, are you going to be able to work your training around the birth of a child, a full-time job commitment? Can you sustain these efforts? That is part of it. You can't just sign up for something and then 2 years down the line it's like, oh man, I'm working now. I'm not saying you can't. You do what you need to do. But you will 100% get knocked out if you spent 2 years training hard and now you can't train hard because responsibilities. So don't ever not handle your responsibilities, but from start to finish, you have to plan out your responsibilities so that you're not losing ultimately anything in terms of the process, as well as when you eventually get to the ring, you're not losing because your time and yourself is split and spread thin. Can you work for free? Do you trust your environment and the people that make it up? And how long can you sustain your efforts? The third thing you want to ask yourself if you're preparing to fight is, what is your end goal? So do you want to strike? Do you want to grapple? Or do you want to do mixed martial arts? Are you doing it for fun competition? Like if you make it to the amateurs and get to compete a few times, that's okay with you? Or are you trying to make a career off this and or want to be the best in the world? And then how much time do you have? How much time will it take? And how much time can you commit to this? The first one I think is simple. Like if you are interested in this, you should more or less understand it. But I do want to give my personal experience with it, which is, so I'm a striker. I can grapple, but I always make the joke like I'm a white belt grappler. I've technically grappled. I've been I've been striking for 6 to 7 years, so I'll say I've technically grappled like half of that. And I say that to say I am not a grappler. Like, I've never done a grappling competition. I do plan on doing some because ultimately my end goal is MMA. But that is one mistake that I've made. I've showed up to the gym countless times and only taken a striking class, or only sparred, or only did whatever striking aspect it might be, but didn't really do the grappling aspect of it. For me personally, it's because my back health is really terrible, so anytime I grapple, it's just a lot of recovery. But regardless of that, if I want to do mixed martial arts, which for anyone who wants to do that, you have to figure out how you're going to balance the two. Which essentially means, like earlier I said, you should start with 2 days a week. But if you know from the start you want to do MMA, then that means 2 days of one discipline and maybe one day of a different one. So if I know, like, for me, I was doing like 4 days, 3 or 4 days of striking, then I should have done either taken one of those striking days off or did a fifth day of grappling from the very start. That way, while I was getting here, I could tell you guys, like, oh, I'm a purple belt. I've been doing it for, whatever the case might be. But again, my back and trying to accomplish different things, that's where I failed at. That I would strongly, strongly suggest. Even if you don't do, like, if I'm striking and I'm trying to get a fight by the end of the year, even if you don't do a grappling competition, just doing one of those classes per week, when you eventually do start grappling and or trying to put them together, it's going to pay off a lot. I learned through the fire. That's why I say I have half grappling experience. I got tossed right into MMA fight team training, so believe me when I say we figured it out. Like, we had to. But my first, couple weeks of fight team training, I'm with professional MMA guys doing my striking thing, and they just keep taking me down because who wants to strike with someone when that's what they are good at? So, again, whether you start with striking or you start with grappling, or you start straight MMA, which is technically possible. It's kind of hard to find a good situation like that, but whichever one you pick, understand where your end goal is and try to spread it out evenly. So if I want to do MMA, which a lot of people want to do nowadays, I have to train both striking and grappling, and I want to compete in both aspects before I ever just do MMA together, because you want to learn the minute little details that exist within both of them. Like, if you only strike or only grapple, then when someone puts you in, let's call it like an arm bar or a rear naked choke, the way you might react to that won't be appropriate, because you don't have the time and the layered understanding that is required to be able to do certain things. How far do you want to take it? So again, there's no right answer. Like, if you are just looking for something that is fun, competitive, and will keep you in shape, then you might only want to, compete a few times a year and you don't really care about the money. That's perfectly fine. It still requires a commitment, but maybe not as much. Again, there's going to be the fight camp, fight team, sparathons. You might not make all those extra trips and extra commitments because ultimately I got 5 or 3 things I'm trying to do. I just want to prepare enough to be competitive, but not necessarily to be the best in the world. If you want to make a career off this or be the best in the world, then your commitment is like a 1.5 times. So again, if I'm at the point where I'm training like 4 times a week, that makes you competitive. That makes you somebody your size, you guys can go duke it out. But that don't really make you the best in the world. Like, you again, we can make a separate video on everything it actually takes to bridge the gap from getting your feet wet to a full-on swim. But taking classes is not enough to be the best. You're going to have to take your classes, you're going to have to spar, then you're going to have to condition. Condition means the strength training, the mobility training, the cardio training. So again, don't want to get off course, but you got to be strong. You have to be mobile, and your heart has to be healthy enough to last the whole fight. But then you also have to condition yourself. So again, if you're fighting someone and you two have been training for the last 5 years as hard as you possibly can, you have to make sure, your punches, you can hit as hard as you can for as long as this other guy, whatever that might be. You have to make sure your legs can absorb and administer force for however long that might be. If you're curious to the upper limits, you have to watch professionals. So again, they fight for 15 to 25 minutes with very little protection. You have to condition yourself to be there if you want to be the best. And then just to cap it off is the time. So, again, I don't know if you're 10, I don't know if you're 15, 20, 30, 40. Time, I think the older you get, the better you are at planning it. But just know, if you're a kid, it's going to move a lot faster than you think. So put different checks on your timeline to make it make sense. If you're 10, then go, by the time I'm 13, I want to get in my first fight, or, whatever you and your coach talk about. If you're 15, then, it might be 20. If you're 20, it might be 30, X, Y, Z, etc. But what I really want to emphasize is remember everything that goes into that. So from 10 to 13, 14, you may have gone from middle school or even elementary school up into like high school. So, your what you do on a day-to-day basis might change. Same thing from, 13, 14 up until 18, 20. You might now either be going to college or getting your first job and your first responsibilities. So as you plan for your timeline, please understand, your whole life has to be good. You might have to find an apartment and make sure your gym isn't so far that now I can't get to training because I got to drive an hour and a half during rush hour. Like, as small as these things are, I've been in the world enough to like actually see it. People who drive 2 hours just to practice because that's the only option they have. Again, we applaud those things, but if you can avoid them, it's best to avoid them. And then, again, you grown people, 20, 30, 40, you know what to do. Just remember how jumbled life can be. Remember to write stuff down. And when I say checks, you should have some form of what makes sense to you for your organization. But whether it's quarterly, it's every 6 months, once a year, probably a good set of them, quarterly, 6 months, or once a year. Give yourself checks. I want to get in one fight every quarter, one fight every 6 months, one fight every year. I'm trying to maintain my weight within these parameters and those timelines. And then also your technique. So, if you have a whole year, there might be times where you train less and times where you train more, but just look at the whole picture in terms of if I'm fighting at the end of the summer, by early spring, like March, I need to start picking it up to make sure I'm fully ready by that.
People anymore, given them everything.